that's why we're here.
Yep, to do a show. And my name is Eric, and this guy is Adam, and together we are Modern Myth, I guess. It's my modern myth anyway, and today we're going to be talking about vacationing. And I just came off of a week-long vacation, the first one I've taken with my family this way, where it's just us, nobody else, in 13 years.
13 years, wow.
13 years, yeah.
So you were 12 years old the last time you took a vacation?
Yes.
Is that right?
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Oh, I'm so young. I'm just a baby.
That's right. Young at heart.
No, but seriously, it was we went on a honeymoon 13 years ago. This wasn't to the date, but we went to the same city that we honeymooned, and we went to the same restaurant that we had this amazing chocolate dessert at, and lots of great memories and stories. They didn't have the dessert, but we went to the place with our children, and the chef remembered the dessert and says occasionally he brings it back, or she, I forget, but we didn't get the dessert. But it was cool to go back where 13 years ago. And just to give you a brief overview, we're going to cover a lot of stuff, so check out show notes, but we're going to talk about overcoming fear, pushing yourself on vacation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the vacations are for sitting in and just relaxing, and sometimes it's for going out and exploring. We're talking about I'm sober, so there was drinking involved in certain capacities. So that conversation, as well as getting into discussions and to conversations versus debating people that you're meeting, and when it's appropriate to push, when it's appropriate to kind of just let that go and move on. So it's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about, but just getting into it, the first thing I want to mention, like I said, 13 years ago, went on the honeymoon to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin with my wife. And I was in a very different place then. PTSD, TBI, all that stuff. I was still in my addiction, at least drinking, and it wasn't a good time. And my wife is very happy to remind me about how miserable I was to be with on our honeymoon, afraid of everything, paranoid, new places. It was a very revealing. She knew about my stuff, but she didn't know to the extent that I would be affected, and didn't even realize that's what was happening until years later. So in some ways, being able to go back to that experience, not the same one, but at least going back to it, I could show how much and see how much for myself, and show her how much progress I've made, because my dedication to her has been, I'm not going to stop healing. I'm not going to stop growing, and I'm not going to stop being dedicated to that process for the rest of my life. It's my promise to her. And I've held true to that for those 13 years, and I continue to hold true and will continue. So this was just a really cool moment in time to check in and see like, oh, wow, there's progress. And I think that's the beauty of repeating experiences over time, even repeating races over time, competing in sports over time, because you can see a different result, whatever that case may be. So that's my first start. And I don't know if you can relate to that. Have you ever been in a situation where like 20 years ago or 5 years ago, you did something, didn't go great, but then you redid it or re-engaged in a certain way, and you're like, wow, I see progress. Yeah.
Well, I relate a lot to it. And when I hear you say this is your first vacation in 13 years, and that the last time you were drinking and you were in your TBI, sounds like to me this was your first vacation ever. So that's a cool part. And so I think that's cool. And I really want to dig into that dessert thing, because you touched on that. and you mentioned that like the chef came out and told you that he would sometimes bring it out for people. And then he said he didn't bring it out for you. So I want to know the story there, why you weren't special. You guys weren't special enough to bring this dessert back.
Okay. So here's the deal. When we went there, it was like a year old. So it was just getting started. We didn't have much money. That's why we were vacationing for our honeymoon 3 hours from our house. And we got a Groupon code. I don't even know if Groupon's still a thing, but we got this huge reduction in the rate. They were trying to get new people, new patrons into this new restaurant, high-end dining experience. And so we had never been to a place like that. And we got dessert, of course. We're like, wow, those anchovies and fish have the head still on. This has to be a classy place, and we got this little hockey puck. It was a chocolate truffle, but it looked like a hockey puck, and it was very expensive. And my uncultured wife and I both look at this hockey puck and we go, what the hell is this? For like $15? It's a hockey puck, whatever it was. And then so we both took a spoon and took a little bit of it, and we both at the same time ate it, and both at the same time looked at each other and go, oh. It's like the best tasting chocolate I ever had. Then it was a race. Like we were just
Oh yeah, yeah,
voraciously
yeah.
attacking it and like almost fighting at the table like two children. Like, no, mine, mine, mine. And that began our relationship of fighting over dessert, which is adorable. It sounds
It,
violent, but it's cute.
yeah. Well, I mean, anytime it's like we were fighting over dessert, yeah, it's cute. So and that was probably what, like an hour or two after you said your vows of how you'd share everything like equally and all that good stuff. Like you're into
Right.
it, like nope, except dessert. Screw it.
When did it say dessert in the
It doesn't
vows?
say dessert. It's never about dessert,
It's about
especially
debt.
chocolate hockey puck dessert. Yeah.
Nothing. So we went back hoping it was there, and then I saw it wasn't on the dessert menu, and then we asked the waitress, and she was like, "I've never heard of that."
Mhm.
Well, you need to go check. And so the chef said that as they've grown and they've gotten busy, they've outsourced their dessert. So it's like shipped in, which I'm like, talk about lifting the veil on this
Yeah,
fancy establishment. You guys bring in frozen desserts, thaw them, and give them to us?
that's right.
For
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah.
And then occasionally he I don't know if he has time, a special event, he'll bring back certain homemade recipes like the chocolate truffle
Okay.
and do it. So we're like, so now we gotta stock the recipes and the menu, or I don't know, the announcement, so we can quick jump back to Lake Geneva and get this
Yeah.
chocolate truffle because we gotta have it one more time.
Yeah. 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 No, there's something about desserts, and I have a problem with restaurants and desserts. And I know this is not the question you asked, and we're supposed to be having a very serious
It's
discussion.
very serious.
But with desserts and restaurants, I have a rant about that. When there is an excellent dessert at a restaurant, and Chili's is guilty of this because they used to have freaking amazing desserts, they will just say, nah, that one's discontinued. High and mighty ice cream pie, amazing Heath bar, caramel, chocolate, whipped cream, all the good stuff that you would always want on ice cream. Amazing. Oh yeah, and Oreo cookie crust, because Oreo cookie everything is amazing. Just gonna discontinue that. Okay, fine. You still got the paradise pie. I mean, how could you not like something called the paradise pie? Gonna discontinue that too, and we're gonna have but we are keeping the fruit truffle cheesecake, whatever. That's like, ugh, really. And then you go to a really really fancy restaurant now, and it's like flourless chocolate cake. No, I want flour. Give me something that's, I don't know. Sorry, I'm angry about the dessert problem in the United States. But anyway,
This is an
there's
example
yeah.
of transference. Adam's not
Okay.
really mad at the dessert. He's mad
I'm
about
not.
something else.
It is
Let the
something
dessert
else.
off the hook, brother.
Yeah, I know. I guess I need to talk about what I'm really angry about, and that is that I haven't been on a vacation for many years.
There it is.
Yeah, but yeah, I do relate to your story there, because I mean, being a former fellow drinker myself, most of my vacations were rooted around this idea of like, awesome, I get to go away for a while. Usually I'm drinking at home at night. Now I get to go somewhere and drink. That's going to be awesome.
Mm.
And so when I would do that, and of course it would be this thing that I obsessively wanted to waited for. I'd stock the hotel and all this kind of stuff, and was just waiting for it. And then all of a sudden we get there, and I'd just be drinking, and that would be like the time, and it contributed to the my anxiety and fear, and it never went well, and it was always terrible. And then so yeah, I think there were things that I wanted that I'd hoped had gone right at that time, but had gone wrong. And so finally, when I started to come out of the fog of alcoholism, and actually, the first time I think I would call a vacation that was sober was when I did my first Ironman in Cabo San Lucas. It was, I had maybe almost 2 years of sobriety at that time. We went down to Cabo. That was going to be my first Ironman, and so I stayed there for about a week before by myself, just kind of enjoying the pool scene and doing like all the training and stuff like that. But afterwards, my wife and I actually kind of enjoyed a bit of a vacation, which was nice.
Mm.
And so that was kind of my first experience vacationing at that time. And so, yeah.
Well, that conversation around drinking and vacation is very, I mean, they're best friends, it seems like.
Yeah.
And I mean, even my wife, she got a rum and Coke You know, she hadn't
Mhm.
had one in years, and was like, I want to have a rum and coke. I want to have a glass of wine here and there. And that doesn't make me struggle. I don't look down on it. Although I will say there's not a lot of lines in the sand that I have where I'm like, I can't find that. I can always find a reason for something in life, but I've realized recently that alcohol is one of those ones where I haven't seen how it enhances experiences, because you can say the same about coffee. My wife
Right.
said that too, where I'm like, but if I stop coffee, my life's not going to change. I do enjoy it. It doesn't really affect me. I'm not really sensitive to it. I just enjoy it. But alcohol, it's never made me better or
Hmm.
enhance it. All it did for me was allowed me, when I was insecure, to be a bit more of who I wanted to be in a false light. You know, it
Yeah.
wasn't truly who I am, but now I can do all those things. I can have the exuberant joy sober, but that's all the things that I was using alcohol to give me. So
Right.
it was always false, but I don't look down on people for it, but I haven't been able to find why, or why we should defend it, or why people fight so hard to defend it. Like, don't tell me it's bad. Like, this was a good time I had with my friends, and you're telling me this. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it could have happened without it. So what do
Yeah.
we need it for? And there was a conversation I had. I was offered a drink, and I'm sober, so it's always that conversation, right? Like, oh yeah, I don't drink, and why
Right.
don't you drink, and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, there was a time in my life where drinking was way too important for me, so I just had to cut it out of my life. And then this conversation usually goes this way, one of two ways. Oh, okay, or that's weird, or the third way, which is my favorite way. So when people say, man, I wish I didn't drink, I could probably get a lot more done. Or, and I'm like, when you say, like, okay, so what about that? And
Yeah.
that's where it ends. Like, oh man, I wish I could stop drinking. Like, do you
Right.
do you see that as a problem?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, yeah, we have a variety of, I think we have a variety of crutches and
Mhm.
variety of ways those crutches shows up. I mean, they could be destructive crutches or they could be non-destructive crutches, but still crutches. And
Yeah,
in that case, it's like, yeah, I think there's still, and people would probably deny this, but, and that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But my opinion, it's like, okay, if you want to stop something and you think it'll make you better, but you can't stop it, then that definition is addiction.
yeah,
And there's an addiction there, whether it be that it can make you better because you have two beers a night or you have two glasses of wine a night and it just makes you drowsy, but you do it anyway,
yeah,
or you just you're having 15, but that the destructive or non-destructive nature is a big deal. Obviously it was destructive for me. I mean, I blacked out and did terrible things when I was drinking. It wasn't good. But and when people ask me to drink, I like to kind of poke fun, or if they're saying like, "Hey, you want to drink?" I'm like, "No, I don't drink because I'm allergic. I break out in handcuffs." Things like that. I
that's
I've
a good
always
one.
loved that one. Yeah. So I also say I also break out. I break out all an asshole. I'm just I that's my allergy. But yeah, it's just like one of those things, and I found that when people ask me if I want to drink or include me in their world of drinking, there's this like inner circle of like, hey, this is a group of people that are drinking, or it's just a couple of us or whatever, and you break that rhythm of that everybody's drinking with, no, that's okay, I don't drink anymore. It's like, oh, there's like this idea of going like from like, hey, we're all the community to that person thinking to themselves, being very, very internally focused and saying, oh, wait, well, hang on, what's wrong with me? Like,
Yeah,
I feel awkward now because I'm drinking in front of the guy who doesn't drink, and all this kind of stuff. And it's
yeah,
not like that because, for you, I don't want to speak for you, Eric, but for me, it's like, I don't care if you drink or
yeah,
not. I mean, I care if you like start like taking off your shirt and dancing around,
right.
and this is a library. Yes, I
Yeah,
do. But it's like, I don't care if you drink. It doesn't bother me anymore. But there's a lot of like, hey, I like self-conscious, like, oh, well, should I not be drinking? Should I be drinking? Should I, should I like, should I like, I don't know, like, then there's just weirdness, but it's just what
yeah.
it is. Yeah.
It's not like that with many other things, though. There's not
Yeah.
a conversation around, would you like a cup of coffee? No,
Right.
thanks. Okay. Do you mind if I smoke? No, that's fine. I don't smoke. Okay, I smoke. There's not much conversation unless someone has a curiosity.
Right.
So drinking is a very unique animal, and it feels like the relationship we have with it is one that a lot of people are confused about, or they're completely blind to, or they just fully go into something. And I know there's this thing that happened on the vacation where, my wife was like, "Hey, are you going to struggle if I get this?" And
Yeah.
I mean, the bottle is sitting on the counter right over there. I'm not going to
Right.
touch it. I have no interest. But the great part was, she probably won't have any more. It'll probably sit like that for 10 years. We'll give
Right.
it to the neighbor. But I had this experience where she got the bottle, and I loved the bottle. I
Hmm.
love the look of a liquor bottle. I love the smell, but the taste is always the same for me. And so I was like, I want a drink. And and then that was followed with the excitement of getting drunk.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like this, like she said, I just want to have a rum and coke. I haven't had one in a long time. I used to enjoy them. And she had one. It made her stomach kind of funny because she hasn't had them in a long time. And so the
Hmm.
body's probably not built the resistance to it. So she was like, it wasn't much fun. So she didn't do it again.
Right.
But I'm like excited about getting drunk. And that's where I was reminded that, like, okay, I had a moment of about 30 seconds where I was like, I could rationalize doing this and maybe it'd be fun. And then I took it down that path of, well, what are you excited about? The taste of it? Because you don't like the taste. Just
Yeah.
have a Coke. You'll enjoy that more. And then I'm like, oh, it's the burn of the alcohol. It feels like I'm doing something naughty. It's like a man. And I'm like, yeah, but what does that lead to? Like more
Yeah.
drinking, because you're not just looking for that burn. It's all these lies that we tell ourselves, or I tell myself, to justify it's not about getting drunk. It's about the experience, or loosening up, or relaxing, or the flavor. And I can taste all the different notes. And I'm like, I can't. Somebody
Yeah.
can, I'm sure. It's all liquor to me, except for tequila. That makes me immediately vomit. I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. Well, here's an unpopular opinion. I don't believe that anybody tastes the difference in wine. I don't believe the idea that there's notes or hints of whatever
Mm.
bullshit. It does it's not there. It's just not there. It's like you don't taste oak. You don't even know what oak tastes like. Are you
You look
kidding
in
me?
trees.
Yeah, right? I mean, you look at trees. It's I think all of that is BS really, but yeah, I get the same, when I think through that, I mean, like, of course there's always this indication, like if you're going to see alcohol all around you, you always kind of test that boundary of saying like, well, what if, that happened? And anytime I go down that path, and I'm grateful for this part, is it becomes a nightmare immediately. Like the idea of doing that becomes a nightmare immediately, because I don't think of just like how great that drink tastes or the burn of the first thing. What my mind immediately goes to is the infinite number of drinks that I have to have in order for me to be fulfilled, because I never
Mm.
get fulfilled off of alcohol. Like the idea of it's this weird paradox thing where it's like I want to, where it's like if I have a drink or if I have a desire, it's like this it's always thinking of the next one. Well, okay, well, if I take that drink, oh, and there's the next one, there's the next one, and then it's misery. So it's like that one single first sip of like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful, is followed by a death squad of an infinite number of drinks after that, and that's where my mind goes now. And I'm glad it does, because it prevents me from
Yeah.
drinking it. That rarely happens. I don't have that desire a lot.
Mm.
It's just, um, to your point, I like the burn and the fizz of like a club soda water. It's just
Yeah.
like that makes my day, and that I love that like makes my day now, because it
Hmm.
used to be like I have to drink. I'm going to probably drink 2 bottles of wine tonight. And the reason I'm only drinking 2 bottles of wine tonight is because I want to white knuckle it and prove to myself that I can control it. But I'm going to go to bed miserable because I don't have enough alcohol
Mm.
after that.
Yeah.
And that's not a healthy drinker. I mean, that's not a once in a while, like, this single rum and Coke is going to make my tummy feel bad kind of
Yeah.
drinker. That's a dumbass alcoholic right there. That's just going crazy. And not that alcoholics are dumbasses. I'm just a dumbass. I qualified dumbass just for myself, not the alcoholic.
Of course. Well, so the relevance here with My Modern Myth is it's re-looking at your story.
Mhm.
Like whatever you're doing with your mind and your body, you're writing a story. And alcohol is one of those influencing factors. You're using that substance to write your life story. So what is it doing for you? And for me, what the thing that keeps me sober, there's lots of reasons I think I stay sober. One is building trust with my wife. You know, when I'm not drinking, she has, over the years, I've regained that trust. And so now I could feasibly go somewhere over the weekend and she wouldn't be worried that I'd be in a hotel room drunk. So there's a really strong reason there, but that's
Right.
for somebody else. But for myself, the main reason is because whatever you get from me is me. I have no risk of, well, he liked me when I was buzzed. She thought it was fun because I was drunk. You know,
Right.
it's, if I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm happy, I'm happy. If I went through something recently and I bring that to you or whoever, I'm not going to be like a sad sack, but I'm also not going to try and hide it, or I'm not going to be influenced by a chemical. I mean, chemicals in the brain. Yes, I understand that, but you're getting whoever, you know, the most real version of myself is present. There's no fog. And that's what I've really fallen in love with. And I think we talked about this idea of addiction being something that you can't get rid of. Otherwise, you'll lose something in your life that you're really clinging to. And my clarity is one of those things that I get addicted to, is being clear. And I chase that in my healing because I crave clarity, and I crave the ability to express myself so that I'm understood. Maybe not, you know, proven right, but at least you understand. Like, we could disagree, but at least you understand where I'm coming from. And I can't do
Right.
that unless I'm clear and connected. And so there's other people who, you know, I've seen get sober and become addicted to sport and exercise. And I think it's tough to say I'd rather be addicted to health than to alcohol. But I think as far as a bridge goes, that's a great one, you know, to be using your body and being in a health mindset. But that can become too far as well. Like, you have to, you know, be conscious of where you're going with that. And I just had my first workout post vacation, and I had that feeling where it was like that first drink that you mentioned. Like, it was a, you know, body weight exercise, pull-ups, dips, push-ups, that kind of stuff, rows. And afterwards I'm like, whew, that felt good. You know, that
Right.
was good. I missed it because, you know, we've been remodeling. So there's been some disruption in my exercise routine. So it hasn't been consistent, and it hasn't been 30 minutes. It's been 2 minutes here. I can knock out a few push-ups
Yeah.
there just to maintain so I don't lose, but it felt so good. And
Yeah.
there's something about falling in love with that feeling compared to chasing that first drink.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. I mean, I've always felt like I have an obsessive personality. Part of the reason I drank a lot was because that spirit of obsessive focus, of fulfillment, of like continuously improving, was kind of stagnated early in my career when I was just kind of like working and doing a job that wasn't fulfilling, and I wasn't growing. I wasn't developing, and I didn't know at that time that I was like this personal development junkie, that I wanted to keep, like, you know, growing and learning and doing more of that kind of stuff. I didn't know that about myself. So, you know, I just drank. That was where my obsession went. But then, like, you know, getting into the Ironman, it was like, yeah, I think people could look at that, and and they wouldn't be wrong and say that that was an addiction there, because I was, you don't train for like 25 hours a week and like look at that as like the goalpost of like, and look at that as like a badge of honor to train 25 hours a week and, like, you know, really doing this thing, and not have it be an addiction. But when I look at that period of my life, and I think there's seasons, I look at it as like, yeah, it's an addiction, but I I I wouldn't replace it. I mean, it was one of the best times of my life. I actually really enjoyed that addiction.
Mm.
I loved it because it filled me up. It taught me what I was today, and it actually built me up. I think that there are opportunities, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and maybe I'm just like drinking the Kool-Aid and drinking too much of it, but that I think that some addictions can be good if they're feeding the right purpose. But
Mm.
but if they're destructive, you know, that's I think that's the defining power.
Yeah.
Are they destroying parts of your life that
Yeah.
you shouldn't be destroying? Yeah.
Yep. I was going to say the same thing. It's the litmus test for me is this allowing me to love the people around me, or is it causing me to hurt them? You
Yeah.
know, and I think that's a reflection you have to ask yourself. And I've also had that experience with self-help gurus and motivational speakers and different things. And no matter where they're on the spectrum, they're like all into this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, and they've also said that they've created a persona because of the victimized child they were. They built this person and they are just living it. And that goes against my core principles of self discovery. But these people are helping so many people and they're seemingly happy. I don't know.
Right.
But it's such a small fraction of the population that is going to benefit from that. But they're going to impact so many people. So, in some ways, there's this element of self sacrifice that leads to the greater good on a very small scale
Yeah.
of people. That's not me. That's not, there's a very select few people that are meant to do that and give up that journey so they can help the most amount of people while they're here. And they are addicted to maybe that ability. And I'm like, that's great for them. But that is a risk that I struggle with, where I'm like, is it okay that they're doing this? And I'm like, well, look at the result.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they admittedly have given this part of themselves up for this cause. And that's not that different from any great hero in a battle. They've given up their life to save whoever it is. Like, it's not about them being their authentic self in that moment of chaos where they throw their body on a grenade and give it all up in the most real sense to save 12 others. That was their choice. And did it lead them to hurt others? No, they actually saved lives. So it's kind of a confusing thing that way. But I think there's an element of this idea of, are you overcoming fear as well? Like, are you pushing yourself, or are you just always running to the things that bring you comfort? Because you can quickly do that as well. Where as long as this path leads to comfort and I block out everyone and everything that makes me uncomfortable, well, now you're starting to not be a persona. Now you're not following a path. You're carving one out by excluding everything that's not comfortable. And that is where I think that risk dips into the destructive, because you're leaving a path of destruction every time you block that call to growth out.
Yeah. It seems like it's, and I mean, it gets to the root of like, what are we running from? Are you running from towards something, or are you running towards something? Are you from something or towards something?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, like, and if you're constantly running from something and you're not acknowledging it, you're still fighting against that fear. You're not rising above it. You're not really building that relationship with it, regardless of what you're doing. I mean, you could be fighting that, you could be running from something while doing bouldering, or being like Alex Harnold or whatever his name is, the guy who free solos on Half Dome, and even just saying that scares the crap out of me. But it's like, some of that is just like, for some people like that are addicted, it's like, what are you running from? What is that thing that's frightening you, where you seem so fearless on this one front, but you're afraid on another front? And what are you running toward? Like, that's what I've heard repeatedly. And I struggle with this a lot. I mean, I'm struggling with it, now in my world, where I'm fortunate with a lot of things that are working for me, but there's a lot of things that aren't. And I'm just doing a lot in my life, and it's overwhelming. And I feel like I'm holding on to a lot of it because I'm ultimately not willing to let go of some of those things to run toward one thing the right way. So I'm really running from the idea that I have to let go of something. I have to let go of things. And that's, those are things that, it first comes with awareness. And once you have awareness, you can decide on something, but it's not always easy. And so I don't want anybody to simplify this process of transformation or change, or giving up on things that are important to us, because it's hard. But oftentimes, if you can listen to our guts, they're right. And I know my gut's right now, but I still haven't made that move.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
It is. Yeah.
The issue of running towards a fear was really rooted in PTSD for me, and in a lot of these conversations about sport too, was, are you using Ironman or whatever sport you are to run towards PTSD and healing? And are you putting it on as a mask and running away from it, because that will bite you. I mean, absolutely will. And even if you're the healthiest man in the world or woman, you're running from things. I'm running from things, but sometimes we have to. I think
Yes.
there's a time and a place. There's a season where, as much as I like to say, no matter where you are, you can just drop everything and deal with it all. Whatever, like, oh, stop, everything, just pause in the world. I'm going to pivot to this, and then I'll come back when I'm ready. Like, we don't have that luxury. We don't have it in business. We don't have it in combat.
Right.
You know, in combat, there was a real situations where I wanted to pause everything and just think, but you didn't have the chance. You had to react in that moment. And so, good or bad, you know, everything happened. And then after that moment, you have to, I'm not going to say you have to, even if it's a week, even if it's a month, 2 months later, you have to get to a point where you can sit down and be like, what the hell just happened? What was that? Because if you don't reflect on it, and the other important part is reflecting on it with people who were involved, because everyone views that situation differently. Everyone tells a different story of the same event. And that's a really hard thing to realize, because no matter how you interpret anything, if someone else was there, they interpret it differently. And so this overcoming fear on this vacation is, you know, it's not anecdotal. It's real. And I question my own parenting ability, because, you know, my children might be afraid of this thing that other people would be like, just push them into it. Just do it.
Right.
But I don't believe in that, because I'm going to meet them where their fear is and help them lean into that fear. I'm not going to rank order it. Well, when I was a kid, I didn't have this luxury. Like, I just had to do it. Well, guess what? I'm at that point running away from the fear of addressing something that hurt me as a kid, you know, because I need this to be the standard. And now you need to embrace that standard, child, because for me to embrace where you are, I have to go look at where I was and where I wasn't loved in that moment that I needed. And yeah, you can overcome anything, you know, but I want my kids, and I've committed to this, and there's patience, there's pain in it, because I believe it's right. And just because I believe it's right doesn't mean it's easy. It often isn't. But I believe, you know, I talked to you about my youngest bike riding.
Right.
And we get home from, well, before we went on vacation, I talked to you about like, she's 8 and didn't want to ride bike. And I didn't want to push her into it, because I want her to ride when she wants to. Like, she doesn't need to ride a bike. But then she wanted to. And I got her, you know, interested, and she had a hard time. And I got short and frustrated because I was insecure about, like, I had failed her because she isn't riding a bike right now. And I took a day, and the next day she got it.
Oh, nice.
And so we get back from vacation, and she's like, I want to ride my bike.
So she's riding a bike now. That's awesome.
She's riding a bike.
That's awesome.
But I had to have that patience and also not vomit on her my own insecurity.
Yeah.
Because if I force her to ride a bike, she's going to learn. But is she going to want to ride the bike? Or is she going to have bitterness? Or is she going to be more empowered because she found a reason to ride the bike? She found her way to ride the bike, and she let me know how she wanted to learn. And that learning was me watching her and not touching the bike. And she had to stumble around and stumble until she figured it out. And I'm like, that's your process. And she got it in 2 days. But I was freaked out because I have to push her down a hill, and I have to do all this. I had to make her crash so she can feel the pain of the crash and realize it's okay. And I'm like, no, she has agency in her life. And when she wanted to learn how to read, you know, my oldest figured it out because she found the motivation, and bam, she was reading better than a lot of kids her age. And it took her a year to catch up, you know? So it's just like, I get these fears in my head, and I've realized that for me to push at my speed serves them not. Like, I need them to find the why, because I never found the why. I just found the push. People always pushed me to get to this standard, to this level of ability. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, why am I learning this? Why am I doing this? I did it. I don't care. I don't ever want to do it again.
Right.
And now I'm having to unlearn all of that. And I go on vacation, and now I'm adventuring. But I didn't want to, because I was forced into all of these adventures, and I didn't know why I was doing it. I didn't understand the connection. And now I get to see that through my children. I get to connect with my wife, and I get to feel that, because no one's pushing me into it. I'm choosing to do it. And that is super powerful, but it takes patience, and there's fear in it because you're not on the world's timeline.
Yeah. So you feel like you feel like the choice, the power of choice is an important aspect of kind of leaning into that adventure. It's just not like you can you can get over, you can embrace or rise above your fears,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to choose that adventure. So you have to choose your own adventure. Is that right?
Choose your write your story, right? And
Yeah.
here's an example. This is fictitious. If I go on this vacation and my wife is nagging me the whole time, like, you never want to do anything, you're so boring, like, just go ziplining, like, and it's just like constant. And then I
Yeah.
go ziplining. Is my experience going to be good, or is it going to be better if I say, I'm nervous about it, but like I see the value, and I know our kids need adventure, so I'm going to step up.
Yeah.
I'm going to face this.
If you're being forced to zip line, you're just gonna be on that zip line doing this.
No, you have to go up here. Get a break.
Right. No, but you're so resentful that you're just screw that
Just
break.
spinning.
You're just like banging
Stop
against
me.
everything.
That would be beautiful.
Stupid zip lines.
Why do you even make these things? It's not Costa Rica, it's Wisconsin.
Right.
But that's the reality is, if you're forced out of shame and guilt to do something, you'll do it, but you're not going to experience it. And so finding the why, understanding why it's important, understanding why you're hung up on it, understanding why your children are hung up on it. I mean, that was a process, but it wasn't just get over it, or come on, like, it's not that big a deal, like, to diminish or whatever. Is to meet and let them express, and to reassure, like, well, we're going to do it, like, but we're going to be there together, and this is a connection thing, and to remind them that in the past, this is a pattern where you're nervous. I get that. You've never done it before, so you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But every time we go and do that, and you step up and you do it, and you find your why, what do you do? And then they're like, well, we have a great time.
Right.
Like, yeah. So this is just that process of feeling the fear, not wanting to do it, wanting to avoid it. Now we're going to face it, because it's not going to cost us anything to go do it. I'm not, the risk reward ratio is what I always talk about. Is it worth the risk? Is the reward great enough for the risk that we're going to take? Absolutely. It's a really safe thing, but we're going to feel fear, and facing that fear, there is always a reward. And now they're like, let's go back for the big course, but they chose, they were allowed agency to choose, with a little bit of push, saying like, well, we're going to give it a shot. All I ask is that you show up and try. And if we got to bail, we bail.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then too, because for our kids, and getting into that vacation mode, I mean, like, for our kids, how much should we be kind of pushing or egging our kids on to try those new things? And how much should we just by leading by example? Because I'll say this as an example. I think, my wife and I live a pretty adventurous life. We do some adventurous stuff. I mean, Ironman, doing, going up to the mountains, and a lot of times it's like, the kids just don't want to do a lot of that stuff. And so, and we respect that, and that's okay. We also want to encourage going out of the comfort zone. So it's like, is that example just going to be teaching them, like, later on? Is that going to be guiding them to take on their own adventures? Because it took me a while in my life. Our vacations, like, for me as a kid, where we hopped in the Dodge Caravan with, the wood panel, and back in the 80s. And
same with me.
Yeah, took those great grand vacations from Southern California to, like, San Jose, California, or Phoenix, Arizona. Those were our 2 vacations a year, and that was it. And that's so it wasn't a lot of, like, we weren't going ziplining, we weren't doing a lot of, like, Hawaii trips or anything like that. That didn't come until later. And even now, it's like, I always desired this idea to, like, go on adventurous trips, to go across the world. I even talked about in my recent podcast, I used to watch this travel show on the Travel Channel with Albie Mangels, who was like this 70s and 80s, like, adventurer who just, like, quit his job and bought a cheapo boat and just started sailing across the world and doing crazy Australian adventures. It was, and so that was, like, my dream, but I never did it because I was afraid. And I didn't have, like, that point of reference of, like, what had been done. So it hasn't been until recently that I've, like, started taking those adventures. How do we encourage our kids to, like, not give into the fear of it and just kind of do that anyway, knowing that kind of that adventure is the antidote to anxiety?
Well, this is a hard question. The last time I had this
Yes, I
conversation,
win the hard question competition.
the last time I had this conversation, I got chewed out because my views are very different from a lot of parents, I think.
Mhm.
Uh, and so I'll preface it with this. I don't know what universal truth can be extrapolated. I don't know that there is one. So
Eric,
on
I
my,
want the absolute 100%
well,
true
get your pen out.
world answer. This bet when I die and get face to face with God, I'm going to ask him this question. You better be right. I'm just
Here's the book. All You Need to Know in Parenting by Eric
right.
Beach. Read nothing else except this.
Right.
I oftentimes apply this to everything in life, whether it's conflict. What led up to the conflict?
Mhm.
And oftentimes it's disconnection. There's a lack of conversation, there's a lack of understanding, and there's a lack of both people having a voice. I really understand pushing children because a basic one for me, if we go to a certain environment, no cursing.
Yeah.
Don't talk about serial killers. Like at grandma's, or like there's a time and a place for any kind of conversation. In our
Sure.
house, we create a lot of openness to talk about everything and anything, and we do this as long as they don't they don't forget that they can't say certain things, they can't talk about certain things at aunt and uncle's house, or
Mhm.
in a fancy restaurant. Like, you can't stick your face into the cup of water and try to lick it and have it spilling all over the place.
Hang on, I'm taking notes.
Yes, that's it. Really,
This is good.
Don't
This is gold.
stick your face in water at fancy restaurants.
Just fifth.
Once you,
It's okay at Chili's, right?
oh yeah, no, it's fine
No.
at Chili's.
You don't have paradise pie?
Yes. Like, we had, you have to wear sandals, or you can't wear your ratty whatever, because it's a level of respect that we show to the place.
Right.
But Dad, I didn't think you cared about dressing up and fancy, like how the world perceives you. I'm like, no, I don't. What I do understand is when you go to a certain place, you're showing respect to other people based on this. Like, I took my oldest to church and had her put on different shoes because the ones she chose were ratty,
Yeah.
and I don't care about that, but you're going to a church and to experience it, and there's a standard, so you can follow the standard. So it's understanding why we're doing things. And for me as a kid, I never had that understanding. I was just told and drug places, taken to vacations, and I didn't necessarily want to go. And the reason I didn't want to go, that my parents didn't understand, is because all my friends were playing for summer vacation and hanging out and doing all this stuff, and I was camping every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not like camping. I didn't like riding bike. I didn't like doing any of the stuff that my family liked to do. And so I started to equate vacation with missing out on what I considered important. And I don't know what the answer is in that situation. My parents, brought me along. I wish they wouldn't have gone on as many camping trips. So, what am I supposed to do as a kid there?
Yeah.
I don't know what conversation needed to be had. But what I do know is the connection wasn't there. I wasn't connected to my dad. I didn't have love for him in the way that I feel like I'm trying to create with my children, where they want to be with me.
Yeah.
And that occurs, I believe, because I have created a very open environment to share all of your feelings. If you're mad about this trip, let me have it. Tell me all the things you're mad about. And I'm going to listen, and I'm going to be patient, and it's going to hurt, but I'm going to hear it. I'm not going to judge it, but I might question it. I might have conversation about, well, you understand why this is important, is because we might not get a lot of time together because, I'm doing this or mama's doing that. And it's been 13 years and we haven't gotten to go do this thing. And then they fall in love with adventure because they're connected with us as a unit. And now it's just going to be us. But as a kid, for me, I was so disconnected that I'm like, I'm connected to my friends. Like, I want to hang out with them because I understand them. I feel accepted by them. And I think there's a level of, when your children feel accepted by you, and please, this is so broad because there's so many situations that can create nuance to this conversation, but at its purest, most simplest form, the relationship foundation of any relationship, even you and me, Adam, if we understand each other, we understand that we're safe with each other, chances are we can have a good time if we were to go somewhere together to Chili's.
Yeah.
whatever. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be afraid to do that. I'm not going to be resistant, but there are people in my life that I'd be like, I don't want to. I
Yeah.
really don't want to. So I always say to my kids, I talk about compassion is conversation over consequence. So I very rarely discipline my children in giving them consequences. We have long conversations
Yeah.
to seek
Yeah.
understanding. We have to find understanding of why we feel this way, and they're free to question. And that works for us, or for me at least. But I don't know that it's a universal truth. I wish I had confidence in saying, yes, this is the solution, everybody. But
Well, I mean, you double clicked on the curiosity button again, I think, which is important.
yeah.
It gets back to that curiosity. I've even heard that a lot just in my recent episodes, and that might be just a reticular activating system or what kind of thing, but it's just like, yeah, curiosity is really just that thing that you can lean into
Mhm.
to really help with that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel that. I think that's a great answer. And what I got out of that is we're going to Chili's after this. Is that
Hell
right?
yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Virtually.
Yes, virtual Chili's.
No, but I remember one time you told me curiosity is the antidote to confusion.
Yeah.
And so if
Did
you're
I
ever
say that? That's
confused,
pretty
yeah,
awesome. Go me.
that's pretty good. Hey, it stuck with me at least, so I can
Right.
reflect it to you. You might want to write that one down. I said this. And I was like, that makes so much sense. So whenever I'm confused, I try to get curious.
Yeah.
And so whenever my kids are confused, it's a curiosity adventure. So these the adventures we go on, I can't schedule anything. My wife has that ability, so she planned the whole trip. Found the A-frame cabin, bought the kayak and the stand-up paddle, booked the magic show, went into the zip line, and found all of the things that we did. And the whole time, my kids were just gobsmacked. Like I was watching them just like cover their mouth and be like, "Oh my god!"
Nice.
And I watched, my youngest on the zip line shaking in fear, but also like leaning into it. And I'm like, I wish I could bottle this
Yeah.
and always know how to help them, because stepping into fear looks like a zip line to some, looks like
Yep.
skydiving for another, looks like going to the supermarket for somebody else. For me, that was the case.
Mhm.
Just going outside and being social was scary to me for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. The thing that matters is you have to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And the talking conversation, the not debating people is important too, because whether it's an adult or a kid, you have to really identify what kind of conversation this is. There's a point where conversation is dead.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's before it even starts, because this other adult is blown or their worldview is so contrasted to yours that we have an hour together. Are we going to solve the difference and the divide? Even though when I have that time, I found that, let's say you and I are very opposite, which we aren't, we actually agree.
Mhm.
The people that I disagree with the most, I feel like we actually do agree. It's just that we're using different verbiage. And sometimes it's as simple as a word.
Yeah.
An example of this was I was leading a group and I made the mistake of creating this exercise. I should have called it that. And I say, today we're going to start off, we're going to do an experiment. And one of these guys was a Vietnam vet, and he loses his mind.
Mhm.
And he says, I ain't going to be part of any goddamn experiment. I was experimented on in Vietnam and blah, blah, and you're not going to, I'm not some punk ass kid's not going to experiment on me. And I was like, and we spent an hour diffusing the situation because I said the word experiment.
Yeah.
That's a big example of it, but there's plenty of words that carry power. And if I say the word patriarchy, that's a big one nowadays.
Right.
What I view that meaning is different from what this person views it as meaning, but we might actually agree.
Mhm.
But because we say one word and have a visceral reaction, all of a sudden the conversation is dead. And so what I've learned is we have to get really clear on identifying these words and being like, okay, I'm not going to address this. There's no
Yes.
benefit in me going in. I'll just listen. And if I have to, I'll excuse myself. Or, in excusing myself, I've opened myself up to converse with that person later, which did
Mhm.
happen on this trip where I was like, okay, this isn't an area where I'm going to get into and point out flaws or holes in this theory or whatever it is, because we actually probably do agree, and it's not worth the fight, because the fight is usually two people trying to prove why they're right and not find common ground. And later had a conversation with this person about something else. It was a curiosity she had about me. And so we shared and talked and found, agreement.
Yeah.
And if I would have had that conversation, I would have missed out on that moment. So even with my children, I think that happens a lot too, where I can, and I tell them this too, whenever I have a failure where I overreact, I always have I don't know what to call it. I was going to say a debriefing session, but I really don't want to call it that, because in the military that makes sense. But with your children, it's like a crime. And so we talk, we talk and like, here's where I screwed up and this is what happened. And I can tell them I was triggered because I, got worked up because I was dealing with this issue, and the world says I should be doing it this way, but I've committed to doing it this way. And even though people, even at the fancy restaurant, said you have two of the most well-behaved kids I've ever seen, to me, I'm like, yeah, but they're not in mainstream school. They're homeschooled, and their math skills are here, and they should be here slightly higher. And the standardized testing and and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? And I get that 30 plus years, or 12 years, as a young man that I am, of experience. That is what the world says you should do. And then I'm wanting to do it different, because oftentimes we try to parent differently than our parents in ways that we didn't like, and fix it with our kids. But I forget that, and I get reactive, and now I'm reacting as the world, not as me. And I'm like, God, I did it again, because I'm insecure, and that's not their fault. They just poked at it, and I reacted. So I'm not perfect, but they always know that if I screw up, I'm coming and apologizing. I'm going to explain why. And then through that, they've been able to express deep emotions and where they've gone wrong, or, they'll say like, I think I was projecting there, and I'm like, yeah, you were. And to me, that's sort of my goal. Is I know what I want them to be when they grow up, because I want them to be emotionally balanced, understand their emotions and how to navigate them. And the rest can come. Like when they find their interests, they can pursue that, but they'll at least have that agency to lean into fear, because that's a big one, to find pressure, find resistance, and lean into it, because you know why you need to. You can't figure out how to draw this animation style. Lean into that frustration, and they're going to solve it. But if I force them to lean into frustrations they don't care about, they're going to associate just the misery of an essay that they don't care about. 5 hours of research on a topic they don't care about, and they'll never talk about again. So that's where I'm. But if you commit to that path, you're going to be triggered, because you grew up in a world that did not allow you that freedom.
That's so well said, Eric, because I feel exactly the same way. So I don't think there shouldn't be anything controversial at all about that, for allowing our kids to have the freedom to really choose what they're passionate about, and follow that, and not push them in a direction that they don't need to be, aside from like life experience kind of like important things. And I know we get trapped in our head on that kind of stuff, but I mean, it's like, I was forced in my high school chemistry class to learn significant digits. And the most important thing on that chemistry exam was how many points after the decimal place you put the significant digits. That was the most important thing to Mr. Quirk, the chemistry teacher, who had a great name, Mr. Quirk.
That's perfect.
But yeah, it's a perfect name for a chemistry teacher. But he insisted on significant digits. And I don't remember what chemistry happened in there, but I run a chemical company now.
Yep.
How often do you think I have to use significant digits when it comes to chemistry?
A ton, right?
A ton. So much. It's just like, it's my whole daily life. We call ourselves Significant Digits Brothers Company. That's our name. But yeah, that's the point. I mean, like when we look at what's important, was I passionate about it? So why did we do that? What was did it impose some level of discipline, or was it just appeasing to somebody else's desire to see that obsessive nature that was in him? wasting an entire half a year of our lives for that hour of time to focus on just significant digits. It was and it wasn't just that. It was like the perfectly drawn circle. Otherwise, it was going to be marked down. And it was like, man, you got to be kidding me. That's like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like, I think the direction you're going there, it's like, yeah, and looking for that level of perfection as a parent, a teacher, and all that you're doing, and you're doing a lot, demands a lot of grace, because you need to give yourself grace because of all of those wins that you're doing as a parent and a teacher. And I think it's easy to compare too, like
Yeah.
how are we doing with against others. And for me, it's like I look at all of the challenges we go through, and I see other people that are able to, like, kind of show their kids this thing, and I feel like we're always just reacting. We're always just like putting out fires, and that's like our job is
Mm.
just continuing to put out fires, putting fires out of work, putting fires out of home, and not really, so that's the comparison we have. But by giving myself grace, it's like, okay, well, we are still building, at least in those experience, hopefully, some resilience skills and some key strategies to help with mental health, and building on that. So yeah, I guess I don't know where I was going with that, but in agreement with you, I think what you're doing is I think that your definition of how we teach our kids and how we kind of train for adventure is a good one.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I think you hit on something where it is, when you commit to anything, whether it's significant digits or a parenting style or a philosophy or a sport or a discipline, which, I think one of the points and purposes of traditional school is I think they were modeled it after prison or after factory working. So they could be, for 8 hours a day, do a task and just do it to completion. And that's discipline. And I didn't really learn much discipline in school. I learned how to sneak,
Sure. Yeah.
get away with things. But that's why I don't like consequences as much as conversation, because I don't want my kids hiding stuff. I want to know that the paint was spilled and it wasn't covered over, so that now I have to buff the floor in some crazy way when I could have just wiped it up, or she could have just wiped it up,
Right.
So,
right.
But all of that is a commitment. And, some people are going to do awesome in sports. It's going to be so good for them to be in a sport.
Yeah.
Some it's not. Some
Right.
will not. Some should be in art clubs. Some should be in music. Some should not.
Right.
But the idea that everyone needs to be in every one of these things or one of these things, and that's how they're going to become healthy adults, it's not true. If they get a great coach, they can learn. But that's almost accidental, because there's, like you said, and I've said, the benefit of a great teacher, so empowering. But the odds are that's going to be the minority of the experience, or at least it was for me. And I'm really grateful for those teachers that impacted me. But I really feel that commitment to anything means understanding why you're going to go through the adversity, why you're going to keep pursuing whatever it is, because it doesn't mean that my why is changing the world, but sometimes the why is just, I love this. Okay, so if you love something, even in a marriage, if I love this person, am I going to bow out in the adversity, or am I going to have conversations and have the conflict and have the really hard conversations, but do so in a posture of love where I try to hear where the person's coming from. And I also deal with the feelings inside myself, because I'm going to be reactive. But if I'm reactive, it's because I'm triggered. And if it's a trigger, that's for me to deal with, not for my spouse, not for the industry. It's for me, not my boss. It's for me to deal with and be like, why am I so bothered? But a lot of people will get triggered, and it's your fault.
Yeah.
You are the problem. Like, no, if you're yelling at me, if you're coming at me aggressively, whether you're a child or an adult, it is your problem. I might have screwed up, but we're not having a conversation. We're fighting.
Yeah.
And there's no benefit there. Like, we need to both stop and then go sit and, like, I tell my kids, what did you do that led to this situation? And what did you do to let the situation evolve? Because both of you played a role in this fight.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just trying to say, like, the only thing you can change is the way you approach a situation. You can't change anybody else. You can witness what they're doing and say, that's their business. That's not for me. I'm going to try to hear what I can take from this. When someone's calling me a hypocrite and making up lies about me, which has happened, I can still hear through the pain, like, oh, it messed me up. But I could always find a kernel of truth, because there usually is one.
Yeah.
And that kernel of truth was I overpromised and underdelivered.
Yeah.
Because I got overexcited and I was like, I'll take that, but I won't take any of that other stuff. I did take that other stuff.
Right.
For years. I think I kept that other stuff, but at the moment I'm like, I'm not taking that. Well, I am, but I was able to at least find the kernel of truth. And that's the core of carrying myself through conflict. And I think that adversity, that commitment, if you want to do something, I want to do jujitsu. So much adversity in this first year. It's a hard sport. I'm at a new school, not because the other school was bad, but this one's 10 minutes from my house instead of 35. This one's a little less competition focused, so I can go a little bit easier and really lean into the mindset that I needed to be around. And it has a spring floor for judo, so it's easier on my back. So it solved a few of those adversity questions. So now I can go back and see how I can make it work. But I love the sport, so I won't quit it. Even though I've told myself, oh, because of the Army injuries, because of this and that, we shouldn't do it. And I've tried to talk myself out of jiu-jitsu 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
But I can't, because I keep coming back to it. And I should. And so whenever there's that situation in your life, go to it.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I say. If you find something, to my children, if you find something that you're willing to keep figuring out, keep facing adversity, get frustrated, get mad at it, and then take a day, take a week, and then you go, God damn it, I can't stop. Like, I'm gonna wrestle this to the ground. If you find that, I will pay for it. I will support you in it. I will encourage you. I don't have to understand it, but I am going to back you up and get you any supply you need, because I will vote for that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. I think that's well said. Mic drop.
Boom. Well, maybe we should end it there. So that was my vacation. Does that have anything to do with vacations? I don't even know why I didn't try to title these episodes.
I think it did. I think it did have to do a lot with vacations, because I felt like it was, the vacation piece played a point in an adventure place, because we all need to take those vacations, and the vacations are more than just going to a new place and doing it, because you can go to a new place and have the same old habits that you had before, right? I mean, drinking or what have you. But in taking yourself into a new place, like you just did for the first time, in your life, really, with your kids, allowing them to seeing those new adventures through their own lives, seeing them grow through their own lives, that vacation became an experience for adventure, and it became a new experience for growth. Getting out of that comfort zone, not just for rest and relaxation, which is obviously very important, but an opportunity to like learn some new things about yourself and learn how to grow. And so, I think it was topical. Very
good. Well, and even if it veers in any conversation, I'll end with this thought. It's good to have a focus. Mm-hmm. If you have a focus, you can go wherever else the conversation needs to go. But when you don't have any kind of focus of like, hey, I'm going to meet up with this other drummer and talk story. Like, I know the focus is I want to learn more about his past. Yeah. So it's not going to be an awkward, hey, how are you doing? Good. How are you doing? Oh, I'm pretty good. So what coffee are you drinking? Oh, I don't know, Americano. Yeah. Well, how about this weather? And it just kind of stays in this weird idling position. It's just nice when you can have, we're going to start talking about this, and wherever we end up, but at least it was the social lubricant. I used to do it with tarot cards, where I would pull a tarot card, not to be spiritual woo-woo, but to say this card has a meaning, and the meaning is this. So how does that make you feel? And then all of a sudden we're talking, but it's a way in to get things going, because that's for people with social anxiety like myself. It's nice to at least have a plan. Right. And you can deviate, like, just give me the first 5 minutes. And then if the conversation goes nowhere, be like, well, hey, we tried.
Yeah. And then I'll walk away. Then you could just go back to like repeating very slowly what they just said. Americano.
Well, I'm gonna
tarot cards.
Yeah. Have you heard about triathlon? Let me tell you about triathlon. Let me tell you about jujitsu. I did see I saw a 3-syllable word. I heard in the athletes, but I saw this article. I need to read it. It said the pickleball or jujitsu fighting for America's new hobby. And I'm like, well, those are very different sports.
A little bit.
I think pickleball has a little bit more of a chance to get people to play versus like, yeah, come on in, get choked a whole lot, and, like get sweated on, maybe get a foot in your face. I don't know. It's not an easy sell compared to pickleball.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, you know, I mean, like most of the time when I tell people that I'm doing like karate or something like that, oh, are you doing jujitsu? I'm like, no, I'm doing karate. It's like something
karate,
different, you know, but it's like, you know, it's just like it's kind of equivalent to say, oh, I just started playing tennis. Oh, are you playing pickleball?
Oh yeah, pickleball.
No, it's tennis. It's like
that's your destiny. Yeah, that's your destiny, Adam. I'm an Ironman triathlon. Yeah. Oh, is that like
pickleball?
Tough Mudder?
Yeah, Tough Mudder. That's right.
What is, like what? Is that a 5K? No, there's a 5K and sprints, but you got to do three sports. Yeah. Maybe that's just your path in life, is to do stuff that everyone thinks is something else.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think that's true. I'll own it, and that's fine. And anytime I just don't want to talk to anybody, it's just like, yeah, it's jiu-jitsu. Yeah,
that's basically
it's the same thing. Yeah, it's like pickleball jiu-jitsu. We hit the balls over the net and then we tackle each other. Yeah, that's cool.
That would be a sport.
Pickleball jiu-jitsu. That's the name of this episode. Yes.
It's a talk on pickleball jiu-jitsu, a talk on parenting. What?
Yeah, and vacations.
Oh man. Well, thanks for joining us. It's good to be back. I had a wonderful time on vacation, and I know that my family is going to have more in the future. And keep leaning into fear, man. Keep leaning into adversity and learning how to own your side of every conflict. And that's a key takeaway. It's a lifelong pursuit. I'm not perfect at it, but I do know it exists. It is awareness. And when you have awareness, you can make a new choice. So hopefully you choose to come back next time. And until next time, journey well, my friends. And as always,
bye y'all. Off to Chili's.
Baby back ribs.